Well, hey everyone, my name is Ron. I'm the lead pastor here at Vitalpoint Church, and we are a church that's passionate about pointing people to Jesus. We believe that He's vital to our lives. And one of the things that we love about Vitalpoint Church is that we have a passion and a heartbeat for people who are exploring and growing in their knowledge of Jesus. I've been on my summer break, and I got back, and it was so great to hear the amazing reports about what has been going on around the life of Vitalpoint Church. And some of you have been very kind in saying that I need to step up my game because the teaching team has been doing such a great job. And just so you know, I'm a little bit competitive, so I'm going to do my best to try to up my game and rise to the challenge that some of you have given to me. We are halfway through our summer series called Discovering Jesus. We're exploring these statements that Jesus made in the Gospel of John. There's these 4 books, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, that capture the life of Jesus. And John very clearly captured 7 statements, and we've been looking at them. Our prayer has been that over this series is that you'll either discover or rediscover Jesus through these statements. See, it's one thing to know about Jesus. It's one thing to know some of the stories about Jesus or some of the things that maybe you've been told about Jesus or learned from an early age from Sunday school or whatever it might be. But it's another thing to actually know Jesus from a relational perspective. What I've sensed about this series, and I've been praying about this and sensing some very important things, that some of us are really being recaptured and our imaginations are being sparked as to what does it mean to follow Him. One of the thoughts I also have is this: we never arrive. We never arrive at the end of Jesus. Not like you get to the point where you go, okay, I've got Him figured out. I have exhausted all the information on Jesus, so therefore I'm good. That's not true. The journey of the Christian faith is to deepen our understanding of Jesus and in turn giving Him access to all areas of our lives. To mature and to grow in faith is to expand in the knowledge and then sit in the truth of who Jesus is and allow Him to have access to all parts of our lives. And that over time, what begins to happen is that we begin to cultivate this relationship, and in cultivating the relationship, we end up looking more like Jesus. We reflect the character of Jesus. This is what I love about the Christian faith. We don't depend upon religious forms and rituals to modify our behavior. No, it's grounded in the relationship with Jesus that brings about the transformation. And that's why we believe it's important to discover, maybe for the first time, or rediscover the beauty and the wonder of who He is. Now, let me say this. Maybe you're new to church. Maybe you're exploring. Someone invited you. They've been praying for you. They invited you and you finally gave in. You're like, oh, just get them off your back, right? And now you're here. I want you to understand that I know even saying this idea of building a relationship with Jesus, growing in that relationship, for some of us, it sounds super weird. Like, let's just call it what it is. It's almost like asking, someone to build the relationship with the invisible man. Like, we don't even see Him. And sometimes it does sound weird, but here's what I know. That when you respond to the invitation to follow Jesus, to give your life to Him and enter into that relationship, the veil is lifted from our eyes and we begin to understand the depth of who He is in relationship with Him. That is the power of this. Now, the statements all start with I am. And this is what we've been looking at all summer long. The statements start with I am. The first week we talked about the I am actually is Him referring to Himself as being God in the flesh. But then He attaches these things to the I am statement. So for example, the first one, the I am statement was I am the bread. I am the bread. Yeah, I am the bread of life. I am the light of the world was the next one. And then I am the gate and the door. So today what I want to do is I want to talk about the next one, which is I am the good shepherd. Now, it's found in John chapter 10, verses 11 to 15, and I want to read them for you. You might have a Bible or a Bible app. You can open it up or just follow along because it'll be on the screen for us. It says this. Jesus is talking. He says, I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. He who is a hired hand is not a shepherd, who does not own the sheep. Sees the wolf coming and leaves the sheep and flees, and the wolf snatches them and scatters them. He flees because he is a hired hand and cares nothing about the sheep. I am the good shepherd. I know my own, and they and my own know me. just as the Father knows me and I know the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep. What a powerful section of Jesus' teaching. To understand the depth of this statement, we have to keep the framework in mind. What is the context? We must understand first that Jesus is actually speaking to the Jewish people. He's speaking to the Jewish leaders of the day, the religious leaders of the day. And he's driving home the importance of how we relate to God and our understanding of God. So in some ways, he's actually flipping the script by comparing himself to what would be maybe false shepherds that might have been in the crowd. Earlier, he refers to the false shepherds as thieves and robbers, and now he's calling them hired hands. He said there's this group that doesn't care, that doesn't protect, that will run, that won't stay in the game when there's something going on or some opposing force that comes. He says, I'm not like that. I am the good shepherd. Now, that means he's not an ordinary shepherd. He's a good shepherd. The word good means intrinsically good, beautiful, and fair. We see the word used in creation, the same concept, the same idea. When God spoke creation into being, he followed up by saying, and it was good. So when Jesus says he is the good shepherd, he's talking about intrinsically good, beautiful and fair, not qualities that he has that he just does. It's who he is. So what he's essentially saying is this: I am God. I'm going to reveal who I am through the person of the Son. This is a key part of the statement that we must understand, because he's setting himself apart from everybody else. The good shepherd says, I am set apart, I am holy, I am good, compared to the false shepherds or the hired hands that run. Now, what Jesus does here is so interesting, because in the context, he takes something very familiar to them and he begins to spin it in some ways. He begins to create a different dynamic. He says the good shepherd will be protective. The good shepherd will be, he'll defend, he'll stand in there. But we must also see that the good shepherd goes even farther, because he reveals something powerful. And it's this, that the good shepherd is willing to lay down his life for the sheep. This is a head scratcher. This is one of those moments where we kind of step back and go, what exactly does this mean and look like? See, in the religious system, what was familiar to the crowd and the religious leaders of the day, and a common understanding, was that the sheep, the lamb, would be the one that would be sacrificed, lay down their life. Last week, Amy, one of our teaching team members, brought this to our attention when she talked about the children of Israel, God's people, being enslaved in Egypt and being delivered. And one of the plagues that came was the death angel, and it was referred to this idea that the firstborn would be killed in each of the homes, unless there was the blood of the lamb that was on the doorposts. That lamb laid itself down in order for that death angel to pass over that home. Jesus says something very unique and different. He says, I am going to lay down my life for the sheep. He takes a system that is going in one direction. He steps into it with, I am the good shepherd. I lay down my life for my sheep. And he begins to spin it in another direction. We must stay here for a minute, because when you think about the good shepherd laying down his life, we have to talk about the cross. We have to go to the cross for just a moment. See, it would be very easy to believe that the Roman soldiers took Jesus' life. Right? They did. They nailed him on the cross. They hung him on the cross. It would be easy to think that, well, the religious elite and leaders of the day initiated this, and they oversaw. They were the watchful eye in the moment of the crucifixion. But what we must see is the phrase, I lay down my life. This is a choice that Jesus made. It is a choice that he made to lay down his life as a ransom for our sin. He paid our sin debt. He shed his blood for us. His body was broken for us. He hung on the tree for us to pay the ransom of sin. The sin debt, the sin is paid by death, and Jesus stepped into that. Romans 3:23. Paul writes this in Romans, for the wages of sin is death. Jesus chose to lay his life down as the good shepherd. Now I want us to think about this for a minute. Let's stack up this truth of Jesus laying down his life against all the other world religious systems and religious leaders. This is interesting. All the other world religious systems and leaders, not one of them would lay down their life on behalf of others so that they might have a path to God. What other religious world system leaders did was, hey, I've had a revelation, I've had insight on how to earn God's favor, and I'm going to point you to those things that you must do in order to earn God's favor. Each one claimed that. Jesus is the only one who says, I laid down my life for you. The fact that Jesus did this gives us hope, gives us the assurance that in and of ourselves, it's not in our own effort. It's not in our own goodness against the things that we did bad. It's not about the self-help programs and self-modification. No religious ritual or activity can make us right with God. It is only by the fact that Jesus himself willingly laid down his life on our behalf. He removed the barrier between us and God through laying his life down and rising from the dead. What I find beautiful about the Good Shepherd is that in the laying down of his life, he reveals the deep love that he has for us. There's a verse that might be familiar to some. It's maybe a verse that maybe you memorized in some Sunday school, or maybe you've seen it on a side of the road on some billboard. But it's John 3:16. For God so loved the world that he gave his only son, that whosoever believes in him should not perish but have eternal life. This is the power of love. That the Good Shepherd was willing to lay down his life for us. Why? Because his love saw value in us. He was willing to lay down his life to value us in a way, and he demonstrated that value and our worth by laying down his life for us. Some of us, listen to me for a second on this. If you've dozed off, come back right now. Some of us right now need a fresh new awakening to this familiar truth. Some of you heard me read John 3:16 and it went right over your head in one ear and out the other, and you're like, yeah, I've heard that before. But for some of us, we need that like paddles to our souls to remind us and awaken us to this familiar truth that changes everything. Maybe you need to say these words: Jesus loves me and gave his life for me. You just need to say it. You need to say it right now, just kind of underneath your breath. Jesus loves me and he gave his life for me. But here's the other thing. There's some of us that are listening to this moment and hearing about the Good Shepherd and the love and the value, and you're thinking, there's no way. There is no way that God could love me because I don't feel worthy to be loved that way. You've got shame and guilt and mistakes and wrongdoings. And the phrase that I want you to say is this: no matter how I see myself, Jesus loves me. I think you just say that quietly to yourself right now. Go for it. No matter how I see myself, Jesus loves me. And I believe that many of us right now are rediscovering or discovering for the first time the power of the Good Shepherd and his love that he has for us. Jesus is flipping the script. He's saying, I stepped in on your behalf. I love you so deeply. I gave my life up for you. But here's the other thing. It doesn't end there. It gets even better. It gets even better. Because Jesus says in verses 14 and 15, I'll read it for you. I am the Good Shepherd. It's the third time he said it. I know my own, and my own know me, just as the Father knows me, and I know the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep. The word know is key to the Good Shepherd, because the word know is not just simply the intellectual understanding. It is actually the intimacy of the relationship that he has with his sheep. Let me explain it this way. You may know a lot about a sports celebrity. We love to put these people on a pedestal. Or maybe you may know a lot about a famous musician, an artist, a composer, a designer, and you can get together with some friends and have s'mores over the campfire, and you can regurgitate the facts about somebody, right? You can do that. And we all kind of go, well, that's kind of nice. But if you sat down over a campfire with us and had s'mores and you said, hey, that particular person is my neighbor, and you know what? Weekly we get together and we have s'mores, and I know this person. It's a little bit different when you begin to spit the facts about that person because you have spent time with them. But here's what I want you to understand, because it's even deeper for Jesus. Jesus even more knows us. His knowledge of us and his understanding of us goes way beyond that. He sees us. He knows us. He knows the complexity. It's like a shepherd in the day would actually know his sheep. It's described as he would know, the shepherd would know what scares them, which ones are frightened of loud noises and dark spaces and heights. That is the beauty of the good shepherd knowing the sheep. As I was thinking about this and praying about this this week and putting some things together for us, I began realizing that Jesus knows your frustration. He knows it. He knows your fear. He knows your pain, your loneliness, grief, shame. He knows your secrets. He knows the unfulfilled dreams and passions that are inside of you that have not yet been fulfilled. He knows when you're heartbroken. When you asked that person to marry you and they said no, he understands that brokenness. He understands the complexity of the health problems that you're facing. He understands the feelings that we have sometimes as parents, that we're such failures in the complexity of raising these children that we have, or the tension inside of us when a son or a daughter that's grown and makes an absolute mess of their lives and we're going, we don't know what to do. Or he even knows the financial mistakes that we have made. He also knows when we're stuck in second gear and we can't break free from the patterns of addictions. He knows our breakthroughs that we want, but he also knows the beauty and the wonder of who you are. He knows how you're wired. He knows your nature. He knows the complexity and the beauty and the awe of you. He's there with you when you're celebrating. He's there when you're rejoicing with friends and family around meals together. He knows because he's in relationship with you. The good shepherd cares for you. Listen, there's nothing. I don't know why I always say that. Listen, because you are listening. Nothing happens in your life that goes unnoticed. Nothing in your life catches Jesus off guard. I want you to think about that for a second. Nothing goes unnoticed and nothing catches Jesus off guard. It's not like something happens in your life and Jesus is like sitting at the right hand of the Father in eternity. He goes, whoo, didn't see that one coming. Whoo, what are we going to do now? Oh boy, this is a tough one. No, Jesus knows. Jesus is never nervous when you face the complexity of what you're facing right now. He's never anxious. He's never afraid. He's never fearful. Matter of fact, he even knows the choices you're going to make. He knows those choices. The other day, my wife actually works for Vitalpoint Church, and the other day, no one was around in the office, and I stepped into her office, and I was teasing her about something, and she said, "You're weird." It's just the dynamic of the relationship. And she says, "You're weird," and I very quickly responded, "Well, your pants are weird." Because it's that commercial, that egg commercial, for those of you who are over 50 and still watch commercials. It's this moment, and she looked at me and she said, "I would have bet $1 million you were going to say that." Why? Because she knows me. There's a small little phrase with 3 words that I want you to consider saying when you are stuck in that space, or in that moment where you don't know what to do, I want you to say these words: He gets me. He gets me. There's a whole movement called He Gets Us, but I'm going to personalize it. I want you to say, He gets me. When you're lying awake at night and you're just sweating profusely because of the anxiety and the worry and the pain of the future and uncertainty, just utter those words. He gets me. The Good Shepherd gets me. When there's something happening in your life and nobody else knows about it, just say, He gets me. He gets me. There's also something else that I've been thinking about and praying about as I consider the fact that Jesus knows me. It's a small little line that can be overlooked. And He says, my own know me. My own know me. Same word. Same word as know. The experience of the relationship, and He compares it to His relationship with His Father. Jesus didn't do anything without spending time with the Father. He did nothing. He said nothing. He did nothing without first spending time with the Father. And the unity and the complexity of the knowing of each other, and the perfect unity, Jesus would seek the Father's face, and He would go and do as the Father had told Him. But later in John 10, Jesus says, my sheep hear my voice and they follow me. Sheep know the voice of the shepherd, and the voice of the shepherd brings calm. If a stranger's voice were to step into the sheepfold, the sheep would be nervous and anxious and not respond. I want to ask you a question, and I don't want you to answer out loud because it could get super awkward. Let's look at me. Do you know the voice of the Good Shepherd? Do you know His voice? Jesus has an expectation that you will know His voice and follow Him. He has that expectation of you. He has that expectation of me. But here's the tension in that expectation. The tension in the expectation is this, is that we bring our Western mindset to this, and we think that it should happen overnight. We think that we should instantly have ears to hear. We think that we should just have a few little lessons, and therefore I have executed and perfected hearing the voice of Jesus. But we must understand that hearing the voice of Jesus is not quick, it is not easy, it takes sacrifice, and it takes effort. It takes effort. Here's what I see in my own life. I can get so caught up in doing things for God. I can get so caught up in doing what I do for God and think that that's impressing Him and earning me brownie points in His kingdom. But the reality is this, that it's about stopping and listening to His voice. Jesus has an expectation that we will hear His voice and that we will pick it up. His desire is to speak to us, but oftentimes we're not prepared to sacrifice in order to hear His voice. And when we try it, it doesn't work. Now, let me give you a couple things here, a few things that have come to my mind to kind of practically help us. I don't want to just throw this out and kind of leave you hanging. So let me give you some things. First thing is set aside time, set aside specific blocked out time, and remove the distractions and read about the life of Jesus in the Bible. I mean, this is so elementary, I know, but I talk to so many people that don't even do this. Read about Jesus' life. It's in the Bible. There's 4 books, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, all recording the life of Jesus. Step in, spend time, remove the distractions. Sunday gatherings. Come with an expectation that He's going to whisper. He's going to speak to you. And if He doesn't speak to you one Sunday, come back the next and say, I'm going to show up with an expectation that he's going to speak. If you show up and you leave church and you go, it was too loud and the kids check-in didn't work and Ron wasn't very funny, he was off point, the other teaching team members are better, and you need to adjust your expectation and come with an expectation of hearing the voice of Jesus. Are you willing to sacrifice something to show you mean business? Like sacrifice something, maybe sleep. Go to bed early. Go to bed earlier. Get up earlier before the kids or before anybody else. Stop watching the shows, making excuses. Well, I need to wind down. And that's not wine as in, the drink wine. It's like I need to wind down. And I need to watch a show. No, I'm going to sacrifice those things. I'm going to determine the sacrifice. Be consistent in asking to hear his voice. Like say to Jesus, Jesus, I'm not moving from here until you speak. And then when your kids come down to bug you, just kind of go, don't bug me. I'm trying to hear the voice of Jesus. But intentionally, consistently hear. Some people go, I tried it once and it didn't work. And I tried it twice and it didn't work. And because that's how we sound when we say these things. And it's kind of like, no, get that spot. Be consistent. Sacrifice. Show Jesus you mean business. And here's what I want you to do is when you show him you mean business to hear his voice, you will be amazed when you hear it. And it will often come in the most unexpected moments. A few weeks ago, I've been seeking his voice on something, and I wasn't hearing anything. And then we got together with some people from our Clinton site when we were on our summer break. We got together with them and spent some time in their backyard. And the man, Dave, he said something in conversation completely unrelated to the thing that I needed Jesus' voice on. And I heard Jesus whisper, "This is for you." And I got back to our trailer and I said to my wife, oh, Jesus spoke when we were meeting with them. And we just had this incredible moment. See, here's what I want you to consider. Your faith will only be as deep as your ability to hear the shepherd's voice. Oh yeah, I just said that. Your faith will only be as deep as your ability to hear the shepherd's voice and to follow. Your faith will remain shallow if you're unwilling to develop ears to hear the whispers. Jesus is the good shepherd, and his expectation is that we will hear his voice. Let me ask you this question as we begin to close. Is he your good shepherd? Is he your good shepherd? You have to ask yourself that question. Before you can even entertain the ideas of all that we've just talked about, you have to ask yourself, is Jesus my good shepherd? Some of you today have never considered this before. You have some ideas about Jesus. You may use his name when you're frustrated and angry. Someone cuts you off and you use his name and you don't know why, but you just do it. But maybe today is the day where you say, I must make him my good shepherd. I love what one of the disciples, Peter, when he was pushed about Jesus in Acts chapter 4, he said this, and there is salvation in no one else, and there's no other name under heaven given among men by which we must be saved. We must be saved. He gave his life for you. No other religious figurehead did that for you. Jesus did it. Others of us, some of us, started following Jesus. You are all in. You are a follower of Jesus. If anyone touched you, they would thought you were on fire for Jesus. But now you've reduced him to a fan. You're just a fan. You've neglected the practices, or you've fallen into the trap of treating the practices like a checklist, right? Well, I read my Bible today. God must be super impressed with me, right? I prayed a few times this week. I should be getting a gold star when I get to heaven. I made it to church 1 out of 4 weeks. I'm really up in my game now. It used to be 1 out of 6. Now it's 1 out of 4. So God must be super impressed. We can have all these things in place and totally miss the point that the good shepherd desires to know us, and he desires to speak to us, and his expectation is that we will know him. How can you hear his voice if you don't make time for him? I've been wondering about this. What would it look like? I've been dreaming a little bit about this and praying about this for Vitalpoint Church. What would it look like if a group of people at all different stages of faith decided to pattern their lives around the relationship with Jesus? Daily, anticipating, expecting, getting up, sacrificing, carving time, of spending time with him, learning what it means to be in relationship with the Good Shepherd. I began to imagine what it would look like if a group of people did that, and I began realizing what would happen is that people would want to know what we have. Because when you're in relationship with Jesus and following him, you begin to look like him. But here's the other thing. You begin to discover that he is a good shepherd, that you sit in the space and his goodness continues to be poured into your life, and that the goodness and the richness and the deepness of the relationship begins to expand. Because when you sit in relationship with him, you never come to the end of his goodness. You never exhaust it. It continues to flow and fill and become part of who we are. And in his goodness, we don't become a reservoir of his goodness. We become a conduit of his goodness to those around us. Jesus said, I am the good shepherd. I lay my life down for my sheep. I know my sheep, and they know me.